Welcome back to another deep dive on a project I worked on. This time we're looking at my marathon project. I made this over the course of like a week. I made it during last summer. It might have been like 7 or 8 months ago at this point, maybe early summer, late spring. The marathon project has two components. I worked on a Craig Mullins style photo bashed painting of the marathon concept art. The idea for it was hearing the outcry of people lambasting the new marathon art style for being too kind of clean, right? Too pretty looking, too untouched, and things like that. I wanted to address that by trying to look at Craig Mullins' type of art, one of the main concept artists for Bungie for the original marathon, and see if we can't, instead of just totally abandoning Bungie's new direction, seeing if we can't find a happy medium in between where we can take that sort of the brighter colors, the squeaky clean, simplistic geometric shapes, and add some grit to it, a la Craig Mullins. And then the second project is a little poster design I worked on. There's a store where I could print my own design for a t-shirt, and I thought it would be fun to make a design that I thought was cool, that had a cool composition, and was also simplistic enough to be readable on a t-shirt. We'll start with a marathon concept art redesign. So for me, and I've said this in the Halo video, I'm basically just a straight-on painter. I just go right in to painting things. Maybe I'll make a sketch or something, but I don't really use photo bash techniques or something like that. That's where concept artists will take images and textures and overlay them rather than just painting it. This is for efficiency's sake. It's used in like the video game and movie industries quite a bit. So it gets a little confusing, but this was actually my first attempt at doing something like this. For my YouTube channel, the Halo video came out first, but this was actually my second attempt. So if the marathon painting looks honestly a little bit worse, a little bit less refined, that's because this was actually, the trial version for me trying something like this. Similar to the Halo video, I took a look at what Craig Mullins was doing, at his texture work, at his shape language and stuff like that, and I thought, like, okay, what would be essential? What are the essentials needed to add to the marathon squeaky clean look? I thought, okay, let's first look at the marathon, a few marathon screenshots, and then what could we do to Craig Mullins it up right, add a little bit more texture, maybe change the color a little bit, change the shape of, our hero characters, stuff like that. And so right away, we see in the marathon screenshots, all the corners are very rounded, right? There's no more hard edges. Everything is very bright, and there's not a lot of texture. There's not really dirt, grit, mud, blood, sweat, stuff like that. You just get a pretty matte color overlaid onto a simple geometric shape. And a lot of people didn't like the sort of androgynous, futuristic look they had for the heroes. For myself, for Marathon's reboot as a whole, I kind of simultaneously, I'm not going to act like I'm a huge OG Marathon head. Like I'm not going to sit here and go, I played all the games or anything, but I really obviously enjoy the art style because I enjoy the Bungie art direction of that time. However, in a vacuum, if this Marathon reboot wasn't a reboot of Marathon, if it was just its own thing, I do like the shape language and color style and usage of this game. I'm a huge fan of Mirror's Edge. I literally have more hours in the two Mirror's Edge games than most video games that I've played in my life. So again, in a vacuum, I enjoy it, just not as a Marathon reboot. So basically, I just decided to block in, right? We're going to have like a huge simplistic shape in the midground, have it casting a shadow. So already we got something a little more dark going on. And then maybe in the background, we've got some, pops of color, our bright objects. Rather than going with a very organized and neat and, parallel to the ground shapes, I wanted everything to be a jumbled mess. I actually took this as a map from Halo 3 to put in the background with these big satellite dishes. And then I took some objects and, things like that from the trailers and mashed them all together. Again, I definitely came a long way, I think, in just my second painting, kind of doing the foliage and doing the rocks with photo bashing. I'm honestly, you could barely even see the original photo because I ended up just using my texture brushes that I have in Procreate and painting over all of them anyway. I just kind of used them to establish mood. But here, it was a bit less refined. I was trying to figure out how the heck to introduce some photo bashing into my workflow. But yeah, if we pay attention to our big container, shipping container thing here, from the trailer, there's like a shot where a character's running through the hall, and it's got like all these diagonal lines kind of going through, and then, a little bit of, a simplistic logo or something. So I figured, why not why not match that same thing here, right? We don't want to just give up, take the easy route, and just make something that looks like old Marathon. We need to take elements of new Marathon and see if we can't merge it with the past. So I mostly just took some texture brushes and things like that and added some dirt, blood, and grit, right? This is going to be a hero shooter. There's going to be firefights happening in these arenas, so there should be signs of life. Things shouldn't look so sanitized and perfect. And then, you kind of got like the watery thing here. It's watery area taken from the trailer, so I could have a cool reflection of my character. And then again, introduce some shapes, but have it be a bit more chaotic and overgrown. Again, not so sanitized. I think my girlfriend was at the airport and I saw like the column had like a giant A2 next to her. And I was working on this project as I was FaceTiming with her. So I decided to include that as like the big, as the big piece of text in this, because a lot of what Marathon is it's sort of graphic design turned into a 3D art style, in my opinion. And then I played with 2 different color temperatures and 2 different times of day, basically. A lot of the Craig Mullins Marathon concept art is at this sort of like, almost at a sort of dusk, maybe sunset, maybe not a dusk, maybe like a sunset, where everything feels kind of eerie and very alien with like these deep oranges. So I thought, what if we take the same painting, but just, make it, desaturate everything, make it a bit darker, make it a bit more orange. I do like on its own, I kind of like the mood that this painting evokes. But again, this is the one we're trying to aim for, because we are trying to find a marriage between new Marathon and old Marathon. For the character himself, holding this sort of dual RPG look, and then, he's got like this big lab coat on. In all, or not in all, but in so much of Craig Mullins' concept work for Marathon, it's like the same sort of marine looking dude. If you played Halo 3, this helmet. It's the security helmet. There's no doubt about it. So 2 things stuck out to me. He's always kind of he's always holding a rocket launcher, and oftentimes he's in this this kind of basic static pose. He's like holding something, and he's got the rocket over his arm. So for me, check. And then in this painting in particular, he's holding like a spine or something like that. I'm not really sure what it is. They do that in the new trailer, in the new Marathon reveal trailer as well. A character rips like a neural spine or implant or something from another character's head. So I decided to mimic that here, right? He's got some weird spinal object that he's holding. And then for the lab coat, sometimes he's got a bit more of a garb with some folds going on. And so I looked at the jackets that these scientists have in the cinematic short, right? In the cinematic short. And so I sort of just gave him, again, taking it and trying to bash it onto his person. Why not have the classic like Marathon Marine, but then he's, maybe like, I don't know, slaughtered or found one of the dead scientists and putting that coat over. And now you've got, some of the pops of color from one of these heroes from the hero shooter mixed with the actual Marine, mixed with clothing we actually see in the new Marathon world. And then moving on to the Marathon poster. This was something, it was pretty easy. It was really fun to design it. It was very simple. I do want to make sure to take note, and I'll put some of the artist's work up and a link to their profile if I can find it, because I don't remember the name of them. But after I made all this stuff, and especially since then, because it's been a while since I finished this painting, and then now I'm finally getting around to making this video, there was an artist who Bungie, I believe outright plagiarized their work. Like they weren't just inspired by it, but I think they actually used textures or posters or materials or something from an independent artist's work, which is just horrible. It's awful. But yeah, since I am aware of that, I wanted to just like give them a shout out, because for me, I was inspired by, I guess you could say Mirror's Edge, but by Marathon to do this, and unknowingly inspired by that person's work. So I just wanted to take the time to put their stuff up and say, go check them out, because if you think this vibe that I've created is cool, they're like the progenitor of it. So go check their stuff out. I haven't really seen it, so I guess I'm just saying it's really cool, but I'm sure it's really cool if, it helped to create the Marathon aesthetic, and hopefully Bungie pays them and credits them. So for me, the composition is I wanted to have like a big face here. I wanted to have, a large wall of text here, smaller text here. Same thing going back to the reveal trailer of Marathon. You have the actual trailer itself with all the characters, running and moving down halls and stuff like that. And then you have these weird like still frames with a bunch of graphical microchip, I guess, bold textures overlaid. And so I just paused the trailer sometimes and I would just look at it because, just visually, it was cool visual noise. And so I decided to take the colors and the sort of shape design and use that as inspiration for the poster. And so you can see I knew I just wanted like a bunch of like basic shapes, right? You got some circles, you got like these really weird thin crosses going down, and then a sort of like grid like node going across. You've got, some triangles. I know I'm just saying shapes, but that's what it is. And then I took, once again, that same pattern you see in the hallway that I included in my concept painting. I wanted to mimic it here. Once again, adding in some just, random letters that I think design well. Hopefully I translated these well enough. I tried to use multiple translators to make sure. I just took phrases that sounded cool from Marathon, from Bungie games, and put it in here. Here you have like the classic escape will make me God, and somewhere in the heavens they know. A very Evangelion type of phrase. And then I thought it'd be cool to have the actual color palette listed like as a part of the design. So I just took like relative to how much space, I think that was the idea when I made this, relative to how much space I was taking up on the canvas, I wanted the color size to match that. Yeah, that's about it. I made a bunch of alternate versions, right, with these cool glitch textures. Procreate has a glitch like filter you can do that makes it pretty easy to make these patterns. And then I also just use like a square brush and hand drew some of it and just repeated it. You can actually see, I had to change the color and opacity of some of the text. Even on this one, it's kind of coming this way, but it's fading out as it gets closer to the character, just for visual clarity's sake. None of these ended up being the one I went with for the t-shirt, because I actually I tried to print out this one just to see what it would look like, and the colors were so dull on the final design that it just doesn't look that good. But I think this one came out pretty well. I'm not the biggest fan of graphic tees always, but I think when something is simplistic and it could stand on its own and look cool, like if it's something where it's a reference to maybe something from pop culture, but you otherwise wouldn't know, you might just be like, oh, that's just a cool design on a t-shirt. I'm a big fan of stuff like that, so that's what I was going for. I don't know if I was successful, but in my eyes, I think this is a pretty good balance. The line weight is very light. A lot of the text is very light. The elements that are heavier and thicker aren't that dark of a value or bright of a color. So I feel like overall it's a pretty decently balanced composition, both color-wise and line weight-wise. And yeah, I'll put up a picture of the final product on a t-shirt. On the t-shirt that I printed out, Bungie lawyers, anyone who sees this, I did not sell this. I did not sell this t-shirt. I own this t-shirt. I just made it for myself. So I didn't print this out like because I was trying to make money from your guys' stuff. I just printed it out for myself because I went to the efforts to make a cool design. I figured I'd want to print it out. But yeah, this would make a cool poster, I think. Let me know if you want to see something like this. Maybe I can do a separate design some other time that isn't, marathon themed. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the people who've watched my Bloodborne trailer, and my channel's been getting some more subscribers and stuff like that. This channel started off, and kind of still is, just a record keeping of my portfolio, which is why I'm going to continue to go over older paintings that I've done and stuff like that, and talk about the design, the process and ideation and ideas I had behind them as I was making them. But yeah, I do appreciate the support. That's really cool. A few people even subscribed to the Patreon, so that's been awesome as well. Again, it's not necessary, but it's cool to have a little bit of support as I'm only doing this stuff in my free time. Thank you so much for watching as always. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.